This is Rebase.
So what do you do for a living? Oh yeah? How's that? These are questions you hear on a regular basis. And maybe you used to answer with excitement, with passion, with joy, but now you dread even answering the question. Well, I'm here to tell you this is not a show that's going to tell you how to quit your job and start a new company. Maybe that's not for everybody. It is, however, a show that will help you to rediscover your purpose, that passion, that joy, and that fulfillment in what it is you do. Or, if nothing else, you might figure out what it is you should be doing on a daily basis. This is Rebase. We're here to help you transform your career and change your life. Welcome back to Rebase on NPR. I'm your host, Shaun Martin, filling in for Topher Hartwell, who's currently in Kaliningrad, undergoing a reverse lobotomy. Just kidding. Welcome, guys. Welcome back to Rebase. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I've got a special episode for you. And in this particular episode, we're going to go through a handful, maybe a boatload, maybe a metric fuck ton of tips designed to help you ace any interview. So 'tis the season for people to kind of be on the job hunt. I know that there's not typically a season, but there definitely is a trend. You see a lot more people in the first quarter of the year leaving one job and looking for a new opportunity. And even if that isn't you, you can still use these tips if you interview other people, or in the future, if you're considering finding a new opportunity, you can use these tips to help you then in interviewing. Or again, if you interview people, maybe this will help you figure out some things to hone in on and look for in the candidates that are coming into your office, or that you're phone screening, or even just reviewing resumes. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in on how to ace your next interview. First tip, ask questions ahead of time. You want to ask things, mechanical things about the time, the format. Ask who the participants are going to be. Find out who is going to be interviewing you. You may not always get answers or direct answers or, clear answers to a lot of these questions, and that's fine. But it can't hurt to ask and to indicate some interest. Worst case scenario, they tell you that you're going to be there for, an indeterminate amount of time between 0 and 6 hours, and you'll be talking with a number of people from the blank team. But if you at least ask, then you might get some information that can really help you out going into the next tip, which is to do your homework. In an internet age, there's no excuse for going into an interview completely blind about the opportunity, about the company, about the team. Every company that's worth its salt has a ton of media out there, not to mention there are sites like glassdoor.com that allow people to publish reviews about their employers, allow people to publish reviews about interview processes. So unless you are interviewing somewhere where there's no internet, in which case I question how you're downloading and listening to this podcast, but unless that's the case, do your homework ahead of time. For smaller companies especially, jump on Glassdoor, see if there's a profile out there for the company, see if people are leaving feedback about the company. And for larger companies, if you're working for a Fortune 500 or something like that, you should have a sense of what division, what department, what team what district, whatever you want to call it, you might be working on should you get the job that you're applying for. And for those larger companies, if you find out that you're going to be working for a massive corporation, but you're going to be working on the, how do I even say this? You'd be working on the Weapon X division, go on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's your friend. And they've relaxed the rules over the years so you can reach out to people who you may not have a direct first class connection with. And you can find people that also work on the Weapon X project and in that division. And you can email them, ask them just general questions about, how they've liked it so far. Tell them that you're very interested in joining their team, that you might be coming in to interview to become a member of that team. Or is there anything that maybe you should know ahead of time? Were there any surprises that they came into? What's their general sense of the culture? People love to be asked about themselves. So if you reach out genuinely to somebody who might be a future peer, coworker, manager, ask them legitimately questions showing interest about the nature of the work. Also, when you're asking the questions ahead of time of your recruiting contact, whoever it may be, ask them if you're going to have time to ask questions in the interview. That's a critical thing. And most interview processes that are worth their salt give you some time at least to ask a few questions. So that said, assuming that you're going to get time to ask questions during the interview, you want to go in and ask quality questions. Prepare them ahead of time. There's nothing I love more. I've interviewed probably 200 developer candidates and dozens upon dozens of other positions that are related to the software development field and product design, agility, IT, networking, whatever it may be. And there's nothing I love more than to see a candidate who comes prepared and they have written questions. Even if they've already been answered, they like to get another person's point of view because they recognize and realize that getting an answer from a single person is not necessarily going to be fact. There's going to be some opinion in there. So, they like to get a second opinion, a third opinion. So go in and ask quality questions that require quality answers. Avoid questions, for example, that could lead to one-word answers. Don't ask, well, how do you like working here? Or is the work-life balance okay? People are going to just say, yeah, it's fine. I like it. I've been here 5 years. I've been here 20 years. It's a paycheck. Like, people are going to give awful answers to that question. And even if they don't, how much value are you going to derive from their answers to that question? Going back to the example about work-life balance, maybe don't ask questions that you kind of know what the politically correct answer is going to be. Never once have I been asked that work-life balance question, which I do get asked about 50% of the time. And have I answered with, yeah, it's kind of awful. It's usually okay, but we have times where you really don't get to see your family all that much. Like, nobody's going to answer that question in a way that is going to put the company in a negative light. They're always going to give you the answer they think you want to hear. So maybe ask a more creative question that's along the same lines. So instead of, how is the work-life balance? Maybe ask, in my experience, I've run into some projects or some deadlines that occasionally you have to burn the midnight oil. How does that apply here? Do you see that a lot? Does he see it a little bit? You might still get a PC answer, but in that politically correct answer, you're going to get a little bit more qualitative data. So ask the question that you really want the answer to. Don't just ask these canned bullshit questions that people seem to want to ask all the time. not only will you get better information, but you'll set yourself apart from other candidates who are asking canned bullshit questions that people get all the time. And one note just to add here too, when you're asking questions, when it's your opportunity, it's okay to ask questions that would address some concerns or cautions that you may have. It's not all sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops and shit in an interview. You are in a negotiation, in a sales meeting, essentially, trying to negotiate potentially years of commitment of your life to this company, to this team, and they to you. So don't just go in there assuming that everything's going to be golden. Go in, ask some hard-hitting questions. Don't do it in an aggressive way. But if you notice that, say, on Glassdoor, in your particular department that you're applying for, maybe they don't have the best review total, maybe they don't have the highest rating, you can dig into that and say, I'm really excited about this opportunity, about potentially working for this company. I'm curious, could you go into a little bit more around why in my potential future department there is a 2.8 rating when the rest of the company in general has a 4.3 rating? Is there anything you can speak to? If not, I understand. At least then you're showing genuine interest again. You're doing your homework and you're showing that you legitimately want to be there and you're committed to truly considering the opportunity. Next tip, along the lines of your questioning, should you get that opportunity, personalize your questions. If you're interviewing with a director or a VP level person, don't ask them how the culture is or how the day-to-day operations are, especially if they're at a VP or a senior executive level. They're less focused on the tactical things a lot of times. So ask them questions related to strategy. Ask them questions related to vision. Ask them questions related to their tenure if they've been there for a while. Ask them things about how the company has changed, in what ways it has changed over their time there. If they're a relatively new hire at a senior level, ask them what brought them in to assume a position of leadership in the company. You're really going to be able to get some quality answers there that you can read between the lines a little bit. You can take some of it on face value as well, but make sure you personalize your questions. If you're talking to a potential technical peer or a discipline peer, that's when you ask questions about day-to-day. That's when you ask questions about dynamics. That's when you ask boots on the ground kind of questions if that's the position that you're interviewing for. Next tip. Show genuine interest in the job, the company, and the interviewers. Why would you be there? Why would you be spending your time dedicating hours potentially, maybe an entire day or more if you're traveling for this interview? If you're not interested, it's going to be obvious. If you dive into an interview and you're spending 3 or 4 hours with these people and they can tell that you don't really want to be there, you might as well have not wasted your time or theirs to begin with. So be in there, show genuine interest. Like I said, do your homework about your potential interviewers. If you've done a little bit of homework and you see that, a person that you're interviewing with previously was employed by a company that you have a friend or a peer or a family member that worked at, bring that up. Showing interest in other people and in your potential employer, the people who's going to be writing and signing your paychecks, what could be better? Next tip, be well groomed. Doesn't mean you have to shave off your beard. Doesn't mean you have to get a haircut before every interview. It doesn't mean you even have to be fully shaved and, totally well kept. It just means comb your hair, put your product in it. Make sure that you, clean up around the rough edges of your beard. Make sure that, you don't have like knots in your hair. I'm not gonna be able to give great grooming tips to the ladies here. It's not really my forte, despite what you might think, but just be well groomed. If you've got a bunch of like neck hair, neck beard action going on, maybe you trim it up. maybe you, get that excess hair out of the ears. Show, again, indicate that you want to be there. Next tip, which is quasi-related, dress nicely. You don't need to go all James Bond and, be wearing a tux. You don't even necessarily have to wear a suit and tie depending on what the interview is, but how you present yourself is the first impression people are going to get of you. And if this is the first time that you're meeting any of the people at this company in person, why risk making a bad first impression? Even at my current job, with a very casual dress code, there's a whole lot of shorts and t-shirts and polo shirts and flip-flops and that whole startup feel. But years ago, I stopped telling candidates and I stopped directing recruiters at this point to tell candidates that it's a very laid back environment and that they could just kind of show up wearing whatever's comfortable. No, because by not doing that, by not giving them direction on how to dress for an interview, which is not my fucking job, you're forcing them, the interviewee, the candidate, to show you via their presentation, their grooming, and their attire how much they really want the job. And again, you don't have to go all suit and tie. If it's a casual work environment and you already knew that, and you want to wear some nice slacks for guys and, a polo shirt or a button-down shirt and have it tucked in, people are going to notice that you showed up caring about your appearance. And when you show that you care about your appearance, it gives people the indication that you care about other things as well. So, me personally, any interview that I would be going to today, I'm wearing a suit, I'm wearing a tie, I'm going all out, partially because I want to make a great impression, but also partially because I don't get to dress up all that often, and it's kind of nice to show, hey, this guy cleans up okay. Next tip, focus. Please, for the love of science, do not be sitting on your phone, do not be checking your smartwatch, do not be doing any of these things that indicate that you have anything but total 100% complete focus on the task at hand. Do you think anybody wants to hire a person who can't stay focused on a conversation, on a interview challenge or problem or exercise that you're going through for even 20, 30 minutes without getting distracted by something? God, no. So give everybody 100% of your focus whenever you're in the room with them. Obviously, you want to be able to take notes. You want to be able to do things like that as you're interviewing, but focus on the interview. Don't worry about what you're having for lunch. Don't worry about whether you need to get your parking validated. Doesn't matter. This goes back to showing genuine interest in this opportunity. Next tip, do not, under any circumstances, throw your current or previous employers under the bus, despite any strong desire to do so or any prompting to do so. Crafty interviewers will prompt and try to dig a little bit to get some dirt. I've heard any number of just awful trash talking from people that I was interviewing, and it does not ever, never once, has it put them in a positive light, made me think more of them. I've heard anything from, most of the developers at my last gig couldn't code their way out of a paper bag. And management really has their heads up their asses. They don't understand what it's like for us. And then you even get some of those absolute sorts of statements that are kind of bullshit. They couldn't do anything right. They just never do anything right. They never delivered on time. They never gave us requirements. They never always, please, for the love of all that is holy, do not throw previous companies under the bus. And then in doing so, you may get asked, well, if you don't have anything bad to say, or if it's not that bad of a job, why are you looking? To which you might respond with something like, there doesn't have to be anything glaringly wrong there for me to want to pursue a better opportunity, which I believe is what your organization is offering. Flattery will get you everywhere. Next tip, practice answering common questions using specific examples. This goes back into doing your homework, doing a little research, maybe talking to friends, peers, family members who have interviewed for similar jobs or positions recently. Ask them what some of the questions are like that they get asked all the time. If you're a little rusty in interviewing, like I would be after being at the same company for 6.5 years, you're going to find a list of pretty common questions. And you want to be able to have answers to those questions that don't come out sounding robotic and rehearsed, but that directly answer the question using specific examples of behavior that you have from your experience that can give them something really to note, to mark down, versus vaguely saying, yeah, I'm a pretty hard worker and I really value, the feeling of a hard day's work. That's generalities, vagueness, and bullshit. So think about specific examples when you're coming up with answers to these questions. Next tip, don't worry, we're coming down to the end here. Expect surprises. Even though there's going to be common questions, you're going to be thrown for a loop. You can't be prepared for everything. So be able to think on your feet. And while I could do an entire series of episodes on this skill, trust me when I say you can practice this too. If you're doing some mock interviewing or you're working with a friend or a spouse or a family member to practice answering some of these common questions, you might have them throw in something completely random, even if it's ridiculous, because then at least you're used to not just going through this procedure that you think you can prepare 100% for. So practice it. Last couple of tips here are a little more rough, a little fuzzier. If you get an opportunity, and this comes with experience, both in being an interviewer and being an interviewee, but if you get an opportunity, turn the tables on them a little bit. And by that, I mean, make them sell you the opportunity. So maybe whenever you're asking questions, you get that opportunity there, you might ask the question, so tell me, why would I want to come and join this team? What sets this team apart from opportunities at insert competitor's name here? If you do so in an honestly curious fashion, they're not going to get defensive. Maybe they will, but who cares? If they do, that should give you a little bit of insight as well. But if you ask them what makes this opportunity an amazing opportunity, you're giving them the chance to sell you. And at that point, the power dynamic shifts even just a little bit, and they can view you as a candidate of high value that has some options, even if they're the only place you're interviewing with. Last real tip here is to figure out a way to make yourself indispensable. Separate yourself from every other candidate that's coming in, even though you don't know who the hell they are. Figure out a way to provide your unique value proposition and how they would be a fool not to hire you. By the way, never say you would be a fool not to hire me, but you get my point. Figure out a way that makes you uniquely the most qualified and the best possible hire. And the last words I would leave you with here as you're going into an interview: don't try to impress people. Impress them. Is that vague enough for you? My point here is don't try to come up with stories. Don't try to come up with a huge, overly done sales pitch that makes it sound like you're super impressive and you've done all these things and you have all these accomplishments. Be brief with your answers as much as possible. Provide specific examples. Provide great references and prove that you are a hungry and humble and capable person that they should hire. People know when you're trying too hard. So don't try too hard. Just do your homework, be prepared, and impress the shit out of the people interviewing you. That's it. There's probably another 6 tips for acing your next interview, but all I can really expect for you to take away from this today is maybe 1 or 2 of these things that previously you weren't even really thinking about, or maybe something that you were kind of doing, but you weren't sure how important or how critical it was. So if you can take away 1 or 2 tips, focus on those, then come back and listen to it again the next time when you're going in for an interview, if you've already mastered those 1 or 2 things. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Hope this helps you land an opportunity that'll really make you come alive. And that's why we're here.